Some mysteries are charming, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. But then, there are those that feel heavier, darker, almost as if they don't want to be uncovered. This is one of those stories. At first glance, it looks like a harmless curiosity, a local oddity tucked away in the folds of history. But the deeper you look, the more unsettling it becomes. Strange disappearances, unanswered questions, silent witnesses, and a trail of secrets that suggest someone or something wanted this mystery buried forever. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers. We're asking the questions no one dared to ask. And by the end of this journey, you might see why some people whisper. Maybe it was never meant to be solved at all. Chapter 1: The Mystery's First Whisper. Every story begins with a spark. For this mystery, it wasn't a headline in a newspaper or a breaking news report. It was something far smaller, almost forgettable. A passing comment at a diner. A strange letter left at the edge of town. A child's story that sounded too bizarre to be made up. The first whispers were quiet, so quiet that most people brushed them off. But those whispers carried an unease that settled deep into the bones of anyone who listened. At first, the locals thought it was nothing more than gossip. Like so many tales that pass through small towns. People exchanged glances, lowered their voices, and assured each other it was nothing. But deep down, they sensed something was wrong. The strange part? No one could pinpoint exactly when it all began. Some said it started with a disappearance, others with an object found buried where it shouldn't have been. But no matter which version you heard, one detail always stood out. The unsettling feeling that whatever this was, it wasn't going away. The first whisper of a mystery rarely announces itself as important. Yet, looking back, that was the moment the town's story changed forever. And those who heard the whisper, they would never forget it. Chapter 2: A Town on Edge. When the first whisper spread into something more, the town's rhythm began to falter. Shops along Main Street stayed open, but the conversations inside grew shorter, more cautious. Parents kept their children closer, curfews crept earlier, and a sense of unease seemed to cling to the air like humidity on a summer night. It wasn't that anything obvious had happened. There wasn't a crime scene, no breaking news, no loud warning. Instead, it was the quiet strangeness that unsettled people. Dogs barked at empty spaces. Porch lights flickered even after being fixed. People swore they saw unfamiliar figures at the edge of fields, standing just long enough to be noticed before disappearing. The police brushed it all off at first, writing incident reports that never went anywhere. Just nerves, they'd say. People getting carried away. But in towns like this, people notice things. They know which car belongs to which family, which neighbor always takes the same walking route, and which noises are normal. So when things felt off, it wasn't just paranoia. It was lived experience telling them something had shifted. The strangest part? No two stories matched. Each person had a slightly different version of what they felt, saw, or heard. But together, it painted one picture. A town holding its breath, waiting for something they couldn't name. Chapter 3: The Disappearance. Then came the night that turned whispers into alarms. A local man, well-known, friendly, the kind of person everyone waved to at the grocery store, vanished without explanation. He wasn't the type to just take off. He had a steady job, close family ties, and a daily routine as predictable as the sunrise. On that night, his truck was found parked neatly outside his home. The keys were on the kitchen counter. Dinner leftovers were still on the stove, as if he'd stepped out for just a moment. But he never came back. The official reports gave no answers. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no financial troubles. Just gone. His friends swore they'd seen him earlier that evening, laughing over a beer, acting perfectly normal. By morning, he had vanished as if he'd been erased. What unsettled people most was how quiet it all was. No one heard a scream, no neighbors noticed a car pulling up, and no security cameras caught a thing. It was like the earth itself had swallowed him whole. And as the town tried to rally together, search parties, flyers, late-night vigils, something darker began to creep in. If someone so rooted in the community could disappear without a trace, what did that mean for everyone else? Chapter 4: Whispers of a Curse. It didn't take long before the town's old legends were dusted off and spoken aloud again. At first, only in hushed tones over coffee counters in church parking lots at late-night bar tables. Some swore this wasn't the first disappearance. Others claimed the land itself was cursed, carrying secrets older than the town. The story went like this. Decades ago, before the highways and supermarkets, the area was said to be sacred ground. Early settlers ignored warnings, building homes where they pleased, cutting into land that wasn't theirs to disturb. Strange happenings followed. Livestock gone missing, fires that started without cause, and, every so often, someone vanishing into the night. Of course, skeptics rolled their eyes. It's just folklore, they said. Something people cling to when there aren't real answers. But when you live in a place where the past still hangs in the air, where you can walk by crumbling barns, forgotten cemeteries, and fields that never quite grow the same way twice, those stories don't feel so easy to dismiss. The disappearance gave those tales new life. The town started to wonder, was this latest tragedy just another piece of that pattern? Was history repeating itself in the most chilling way? Chapter 5: The Night Watchers. Always close enough to be noticed, but far enough to avoid real identification. It was like they were testing the town's nerves, pushing just enough to be seen and then slipping away into the dark. At first, the sheriff's department dismissed the claims. Kids making up stories, they said. Social media hysteria. But when respected townsfolk, teachers, pastors, even off-duty officers, began telling the same accounts, the tone shifted. Nobody ever caught them on camera. Phones would glitch, batteries would die, or the photos would come out blurry beyond recognition. It was as though the watchers could feel when they were being recorded. Parents began ushering their children inside before dusk. Porch lights stayed on all night. Hunters reported hearing footsteps behind them in the woods, only to find nothing when they turned around. The town was still reeling from the disappearance, and now it had a new fear. Whoever or whatever was out there wasn't just a story. It was real. It was patient. And it was closing in. Some started locking their doors for the first time in years. Others began keeping weapons nearby just in case. But deep down, everyone had the same thought. How do you fight something you can't even see properly? Chapter 6: Secrets Beneath the Surface. Every town has its buried stories. But here, the secrets weren't just personal, they were structural, literally beneath the ground. Old maps revealed something strange. Tunnels and shafts crisscrossing beneath parts of the community, some dating back more than a century. No one was sure who built them or why. Some believed they were left over from Prohibition, a way to smuggle moonshine and avoid the law. Others whispered they were older still, remnants of something the first settlers didn't want to talk about. Whatever their origin, these tunnels had long been sealed off, or so people thought. After the disappearance, rumors spread that someone, or something, was using them again. Strange noises echoed at night. Muffled thuds, metallic clinks, even what sounded like voices rising from the earth itself. A few adventurous teenagers tried to explore old cellar doors and boarded up storm drains, convinced they'd find a hidden passage. Most returned empty-handed, spooked by the silence. But one group claimed they'd seen footprints in the dust, fresh ones, far too recent to belong to anyone from the past. The unsettling question was obvious. If the tunnels were open, who was moving beneath the town? And more importantly, where did they lead? Chapter 7: The Stranger Who Appeared. It happened quietly at first. A man no one recognized started showing up around town. He didn't speak much, didn't introduce himself, but people noticed him. How could they not? His clothes looked slightly out of place, like he'd stepped out of another decade, and he carried an old leather satchel that he never seemed to let go of. At the diner, he sat alone in the corner booth, scribbling in a worn notebook. At the library, he asked about records most locals didn't even know existed. And late at night, people swore they saw him walking near the fields where the disappearances had happened. The police questioned him once, but he had papers, legitimate-looking ones, that said he was just passing through. Still, unease spread. Why here? Why now? Then came the strangest part. When someone finally tried to follow him, he seemed to vanish. One minute he was walking down the road toward the woods. The next he was gone. No sound of footsteps, no car pulling away, just silence. Some began to wonder if he was connected to the underground tunnels. Others thought he was tied to the missing girl, that maybe he knew something no one else did. But the most chilling theory? That he wasn't new at all. That he had been here before years ago under a different name, and no one had realized it until now. Chapter 8: Whispers in the Woods. The woods around the town had always carried a reputation. Even in broad daylight, there was something unsettling about them. The way the trees seemed to close in, the way the wind carried faint echoes that didn't quite sound like wind at all. Children were warned not to wander too deep, yet that never stopped them. But after the disappearances, and after sightings of the mysterious stranger, the forest felt different. People began reporting sounds, soft whispers carried through the trees. Not voices in conversation, but fragmented words, half-formed sentences that left listeners chilled. Help, stay, don't go. No one could ever agree on exactly what was said, but the effect was always the same. An icy fear that drove them running back to town. One hunter swore he saw shapes moving just out of sight, figures darting between the trees. When he aimed his flashlight, there was nothing there. Another night, a group of teenagers claimed they heard laughter, faint but mocking, as though the woods themselves were alive. The strangest report came from a local logger, who insisted he found symbols carved into tree trunks deep inside the forest. The markings didn't match anything familiar. Not letters, not numbers, not even runes. Almost like someone or something had left a coded message. And yet, despite the fear, people kept going back. Drawn in, almost as if the woods were calling to them. Chapter 10: The Stranger Returns. Just when the town thought it couldn't get stranger, he came back. The man with no clear name, no clear origin. Simply known as the Stranger. He had disappeared for months after his unsettling questions at the diner. But now he reappeared, standing once again on Main Street as though he had never left. Only this time something was different. His clothes, though modern, looked slightly off, like they belonged to another decade. His eyes carried that same sharpness, but there was a weight behind them now, as if he had seen things no one else could. He spoke little, yet the few words he did share sent shivers through the town. "It's almost time," he murmured to a shopkeeper before vanishing down the alley. Another resident swore she heard him ask, "Do you feel the shift too?" Rumors flew fast. Some believed he was a government agent, monitoring whatever was happening beneath the town. Others whispered he wasn't human at all, that he was tethered to the land, appearing only when reality itself started to fracture. And though he came and went without warning, one thing became clear. Wherever the stranger appeared, something unexplainable soon followed. Lights in the sky, missing objects, vanished landmarks. Chapter 10: The Stranger Returns. Just when the town thought it couldn't get stranger, he came back. The man with no clear name, no clear origin. Simply known as the Stranger. He had disappeared for months after his unsettling questions at the diner. But now he reappeared, standing once again on Main Street as though he had never left. Only this time something was different. His clothes, though modern, looked slightly off, like they belonged to another decade. His eyes carried that same sharpness, but there was a weight behind them now, as if he had seen things no one else could. He spoke little, yet the few words he did share sent shivers through the town. "It's almost time," he murmured to a shopkeeper before vanishing down the alley. Another resident swore she heard him ask, "Do you feel the shift too?" Rumors flew fast. Some believed he was a government agent, monitoring whatever was happening beneath the town. Others whispered he wasn't human at all, that he was tethered to the land, appearing only when reality itself started to fracture. And though he came and went without warning, one thing became clear. Wherever the stranger appeared, something unexplainable soon followed. Lights in the sky, missing objects, vanished landmarks. Chapter 11: Lights in the Sky. It started with a flicker, a flash just above the treeline. At first, people assumed it was nothing more than a plane passing over or maybe a drone. But then the lights came back, And this time, they didn't move like anything familiar. They hovered. They danced. They split apart, merging back together in ways that defied every known law of physics. Witnesses described them as glowing orbs, some bright white, others pulsing with shades of red and green. One farmer swore they followed his truck down the old dirt road, vanishing the moment he stopped to look closer. Teenagers, of course, were the first to try capturing the spectacle on their phones. But every time they recorded, the footage blurred, scrambled, or simply disappeared from their devices altogether. It was as if the lights refused to be documented, existing only in the eyes of those who saw them. Older residents weren't surprised. They had seen similar things decades ago, back when the mine was still active. "The sky's been trying to tell us something for years," one woman muttered, clutching her rosary as she watched the lights from her porch. The question grew louder with each appearance. Were these lights a natural phenomenon, or a sign that the town was being watched? Chapter 12: Whispers from the Woods. The woods surrounding the town have always carried a strange reputation. Dense, shadowy, and silent in a way that feels unnatural. They're the kind of place where even seasoned hunters hesitate to tread after dark. It was there that the whispers began. At first, hikers brushed them off as tricks of the wind, the rustling of leaves carrying odd tones. But those who lingered soon realized the sounds had rhythm, almost like words spoken in low voices. And sometimes, the whispers called people by name. One boy, barely 14, ran home pale as a ghost, swearing he'd heard his late grandfather's voice echoing through the pines. Another family reported that while camping, they woke to the sound of footsteps circling their tent, accompanied by hushed laughter that faded into nothing when they dared to step outside. The town's elders nodded knowingly when these stories spread. "The woods remember," they said cryptically, though they refused to explain what that meant. Local folklore hinted that the forest wasn't just alive, but aware. An entity that absorbed every secret, every tragedy, and whispered them back to those brave enough or foolish enough to listen. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. The woods weren't just background scenery. They were participants in the mystery, holding answers that most residents weren't ready to hear. Chapter 13: The Abandoned Cabin. On the edge of the forest, where the trees thicken and light barely filters through, sits a small, crumbling cabin. Most townsfolk refuse to go near it, claiming it's cursed. From a distance, it looks harmless enough, just another relic of a bygone era. But up close, the air grows heavier, as though the ground itself is warning you to turn back. No one knows for sure who built the cabin, though whispers claim it belonged to a family that disappeared decades ago. Inside, dust coats every surface, but strange details unsettle visitors. Children's toys left neatly on a shelf, dishes set on the table as if dinner were interrupted, and claw-like marks etched into the wooden doorframe. Teenagers, eager to prove their bravery, have ventured in at night. Some say they heard voices whispering in the next room when no one was there. Others claim they saw shadows moving against the wall without any source of light. One boy swears the old rocking chair still creaks back and forth on its own, as though someone invisible is waiting for company. The cabin has become a symbol of the town's mystery, a silent monument to secrets never spoken aloud. People avoid it not because of what they see, but because of what they feel, the undeniable sense that something happened there, something the walls themselves are desperate to keep hidden. Chapter 14: The Missing Diaries. Among the town's oldest families, stories circulate about a set of diaries, personal journals that once belonged to a woman who lived during the town's earliest years. According to legend, these diaries held the key to understanding what went wrong here. They described the first disappearances, the unexplained illnesses, and the chilling rituals whispered about in hushed tones. But here's the catch: the diaries vanished. Some say they were deliberately hidden, locked away by descendants who didn't want their family name associated with the darkness. Others believe they were stolen, perhaps by someone who didn't want the truth to spread. A few torn pages, however, have surfaced. One fragment mentions strange lights, seen at the edge of the woods, flickering in unnatural patterns. Another describes neighbors behaving as if under a spell, standing silently in fields at night, staring up at nothing. Most unsettling is the final surviving note. If this is ever found, know that we were not alone, and we never will be. Historians who have studied the fragments argue endlessly over whether they were genuine records or the dramatic scribblings of a troubled mind. Yet for locals, the missing diaries remain an obsession. Every attic search, every dusty box opened carries a spark of hope. Maybe this time, the lost truth will emerge. Chapter 15. Patterns in the disappearances. At first glance, the vanishings seemed random. Families, travelers, children, even livestock sometimes, all gone without a trace. But when a few determined investigators began mapping the incidents, something unnerving emerged. A pattern. Every major disappearance lined up with a specific date, often tied to lunar cycles. Full moons, equinoxes, solstices. Even more bizarre, the locations formed geometric shapes when plotted on old maps of the town. Triangles, circles, sometimes a pentagram-like star. Coincidence? Skeptics shrug it off. But for those who've studied the data, it feels like more than chance. One investigator, a retired schoolteacher, noticed that vanishings often occurred in groups of 3 days apart, 3 victims at once, or 3 families reporting strange phenomena before one finally went missing. The rule of 3, he called it, though he admitted he didn't understand why it mattered. Some believe the patterns point toward ritualistic activity, suggesting someone or something was keeping a dark calendar. Others think the geometry is a natural anomaly, perhaps tied to magnetic fields or underground fault lines. But the numbers don't lie. They repeat, over decades, as if the town itself is keeping a schedule. And here's the most chilling part. When researchers extended the pattern forward, it predicted the next potential event. That date isn't far away. Locals whisper about it now with dread, wondering if history is doomed to repeat itself, or if the pattern can finally be broken. Chapter 16. The Whispers in the Church. The church should have been a place of comfort. Its wooden beams were carved by hand. Its stained glass told stories of hope and faith. But for those who dared to linger there at night, the church became something else entirely. Locals say the first whispers began after the town's second wave of disappearances. Parishioners reported hearing faint voices during late-night prayers. Voices that didn't match anyone present. They weren't shouts or cries. They were murmurs, soft and low, like a secret being passed from ear to ear. One caretaker described it as a chorus of hushed tones, rising and falling, sometimes in languages he didn't recognize. Another claimed the whispers always came from behind him, though the pews were empty. And perhaps the most chilling account? A young woman swore she heard her own name whispered inside the chapel when she was completely alone. Skeptics argue it's just acoustics, the way sound bounces off vaulted ceilings. Others think the stories were born from grief, with townsfolk projecting their fear into the silence. Yet recordings made inside the church suggest otherwise. Investigators captured faint sounds, barely audible, but distinct enough to send shivers down spines. Disembodied voices repeating words too garbled to fully understand. The whispers remain one of the town's most unsettling mysteries. Were they echoes of the vanished, or warnings of what was still to come? Chapter 17. The Child's Drawing That Terrified Investigators. Sometimes, the most unsettling clues don't come from seasoned detectives or paranormal experts, but from the imagination of a child. During the height of the town's unexplained events, a local family reported their 6-year-old daughter had begun waking from nightmares, drawing strange figures with crayons before she could even speak about them. At first, her parents brushed it off. Children draw monsters all the time, right? But then, the details became impossible to ignore. Every drawing showed the same thing. A row of faceless people, standing in a crooked line under a black sky. Beside them, a shadowy figure loomed larger than the rest, its arms outstretched as though pulling them closer. When the girl was asked who they were, her reply was chillingly simple. The ones who went away. Investigators who saw the sketches were unsettled enough to log them into evidence. One officer admitted the drawings mirrored descriptions he'd heard from adults who had claimed to see figures in the mist. The fact that a child, too young to know the stories, was producing nearly identical images made the case even harder to dismiss. Skeptics insisted she was influenced by overheard conversations. Yet believers saw it differently, as proof that children, unclouded by disbelief, sometimes perceive truths adults cannot. The drawings were eventually locked away, but whispers say they're still hidden in a dusty police archive, and that they might hold the closest thing to a witness statement this mystery will ever have. Chapter 18, The Cryptic Letter That Changed Everything. Months after the case had gone cold, a single envelope arrived at the sheriff's office. No return address, no fingerprints, nothing traceable. Inside was a single page, written in jagged, uneven handwriting. The message was brief, but it sent chills through everyone who read it. You keep looking in the wrong places. The truth is buried where the town was born. Do not dig, unless you are ready to see them again. The sheriff at the time, a man known for his no-nonsense attitude, reportedly locked the letter in his desk and tried to forget it. But the phrase, where the town was born, sparked debates that still continue today. Some believe it pointed to the original settlement site, a few miles outside the modern town limits. Others are convinced it referred to the church, the first structure ever built here. Even more disturbing was the line, "See them again." Who was them? The missing townsfolk? The faceless figures? Or something darker entirely? Attempts to trace the letter failed. The handwriting didn't match anyone on record, and the ink was ordinary, offering no leads. Yet the timing, arriving just after interest in the mystery had faded, seemed almost deliberate, as if someone wanted to ensure the story never truly died. Whether it was a warning, a clue, or a cruel prank, no one can say for certain. But for many, it reignited a terrifying possibility. Maybe someone out there knew exactly what happened. Chapter 19, The Tunnel Rumors Beneath the Town. Every old town has its share of whispered legends, but here one rumor stands out above the rest. The existence of tunnels running beneath the streets, connecting forgotten basements, the church cellar, and even the long-abandoned mill on the edge of town. On the surface, these stories sound like harmless folklore. After all, underground passageways aren't uncommon in historic settlements. They were often used for bootlegging, storage, or even as escape routes. But in this town, the tunnels are said to have a far darker purpose. Local accounts describe strange sounds echoing from beneath the ground. Footsteps where no one is, whispers carrying through the soil, even vibrations like someone, or something, moving just below the surface. In one chilling story, a group of teenagers dared each other to break into the basement of the old town hall. They swore they found a bricked-up archway leading downward, sealed tight as if to keep whatever was inside from ever coming out. Theories spread quickly. Were the tunnels used to hide something shameful from the town's past? Could they explain the sudden vanishings? Or were they nothing more than collapsed sewer lines and overactive imaginations? To this day, no official excavation has been conducted. Some say it's because the tunnels don't exist. Others believe the authorities are too afraid of what they might find if they dig deep enough. Chapter 20, The Midnight Knocks on Doors. If the tunnels beneath the town are unsettling, the stories of midnight knocks are downright terrifying. For decades, residents have claimed that, at exactly 3 a.m., their doors were rapped on firmly 3 times. Always 3. Never a word was spoken. Some said it sounded like the knock of a stranger, insistent yet oddly patient. Others described it as hollow, like someone tapping wood with brittle knuckles. The most unnerving detail? When the doors were opened, if anyone dared, no one was ever there. The street would be silent, deserted, as though the knock had come from nowhere at all. One retired police officer admitted off the record that he received dozens of calls in the 1980s about these disturbances. Officers would patrol the neighborhoods, shining flashlights along empty sidewalks, but they never caught a prankster or prowler. Eventually, the reports were filed away as unfounded, and yet families still talk about it. An elderly woman recounted how her late husband went to answer the knock one night and swore he saw a figure retreating into the darkness. Tall, thin, and moving unnaturally fast. After that night, he refused to sleep near the front door ever again. Was it a shared delusion born from fear? Or could it be connected to the town's deeper mysteries, the ones no one has ever managed to explain? Chapter 21. The strange fires nobody could explain. 240 words. Fires are not unusual in old towns. Wooden beams, faulty wiring, and forgotten lanterns have destroyed countless historic buildings. But the fires that plagued this town? They were different. They started without cause, spread in unnatural patterns, and in several cases, seemed to ignite in places where no flame should have been. The first recorded fire happened in the 1920s at a small tailor's shop downtown. Witnesses claimed the blaze erupted from the center of the room, leaping upward in a column of flame. The tailor himself insisted he had just stepped away from his sewing machine when the inferno roared to life. Investigators blamed faulty equipment, but many never believed it. Over the decades, similar incidents followed. A barn that burned from the roof down, though no lightning struck. A family home reduced to ashes while its neighbors stood untouched. Even a schoolhouse fire that mysteriously spared a wooden cross hanging above the doorway. Locals began to whisper about a curse, an angry spirit that expressed itself through fire. Others suggested more practical, though equally disturbing, theories. Perhaps someone was deliberately setting these fires as warnings or cover-ups. What unsettles people most is that, to this day, no definitive cause was ever found. The fires would flare, destroy, and then stop, until the next one. Chapter 22. The disappearing footprints in the snow. Winter brings a hush to the town. Streets are blanketed in white, and every sound seems to echo louder in the cold air. But it's also when one of the strangest mysteries comes to life. The disappearing footprints. Residents have long reported seeing fresh tracks appear in the snow during the night. At first glance, they look ordinary. Boot prints, sometimes small, sometimes unusually large, stretching across driveways, porches, or even backyards. But what makes them haunting is how they end. The footprints will trail off in the middle of a yard, stop abruptly, and vanish as if the person who made them had simply evaporated into the air. A local mail carrier recalled trudging through knee-deep snow early one morning when he spotted a long trail of prints leading up to a farmhouse door. But when he followed them back, they didn't connect to the road or sidewalk. They began, impossibly, in the middle of the field. Skeptics argue that drifting snow can erase or distort tracks. But believers counter that many of these vanishings happen on clear, still nights with no wind at all. Some even claim the prints belong to no ordinary human. Elongated steps, claw-like impressions, or patterns too erratic to be explained away. Are they just tricks of nature or proof that someone or something walks this town unseen? Chapter 23. The mysterious lights over the fields. On quiet nights, when the town has gone still and the fields stretch out under the stars, witnesses swear they've seen strange lights hovering in the distance. They're not planes, not lanterns, not the glow of farm equipment. These lights move with an intelligence that defies explanation. Darting, pulsing, then vanishing without a sound. Farmers tell of glowing orbs drifting above their crops, bathing the fields in an eerie white-blue light. Some say the orbs hover low, as though scanning the earth. Others describe them shooting skyward in a blink, disappearing into the night sky. A handful of families even reported losing power in their homes just as the lights appeared, only for electricity to flicker back once they were gone. Skeptics chalk it up to ball lightning, atmospheric reflections, or overactive imaginations. But those who've stood in the fields insist it was something else, something watching. One chilling account comes from a teenager in the 1970s who claimed he followed a light across a pasture. Just as he drew close, it vanished. When he turned to head home, a new light appeared directly behind him. Were these phenomena natural, or were they connected to the town's darker history? No one knows for certain. What's clear is that the skies over this place hold secrets just as strange as the ground beneath it. Chapter 24. The Journal That Was Never Found. Among all the fragments of lore surrounding this town, one detail has become the holy grail for truth seekers: the missing journal. Supposedly written by a local doctor in the late 1800s, this diary was said to contain first-hand accounts of strange illnesses, unexplained behaviors, and shadowy figures that haunted the community. According to descendants of the doctor's family, The journal was last seen in the 1920s, locked away in an oak chest in their attic. But when relatives went to retrieve it decades later, it was gone, vanished without explanation. No burglary was reported, no furniture moved, just gone. Whispers say the journal included names, dates, and even sketches of bizarre occurrences, making it too dangerous to remain in public view. Some believe town officials confiscated it to prevent panic. Others argue it was destroyed, its contents deemed too disturbing to exist. Yet there are tantalizing hints it might still be out there. A historian once claimed he saw a single loose page at an estate sale, a scrawled entry describing a sickness that walked at night. Another collector insisted the journal was traded quietly between private hands, kept hidden from prying eyes. If the journal truly exists, it could be the key to unraveling every unanswered question. But until it surfaces, it remains a ghost in the town story, just out of reach. Chapter 25: What the town hides to this day. Even after peeling back layers of history, chasing rumors, and following every strange trail, one thing remains clear. This town still guards its secret. The buildings stand silent, the people live their lives, but beneath the surface, there's a quiet unease, an understanding that something lingers in the soil, the walls, and perhaps even the bloodlines. Tourists often say the town feels different, not haunted, exactly, but heavier, as if the air itself remembers. Ask the locals directly, and you'll get polite smiles, quick subject changes, or a dismissive laugh. But the hesitation in their eyes betrays something deeper, an unspoken pact to never reveal what they know. Perhaps the truth is buried in sealed archives. Maybe it's etched into that missing journal. Or maybe it survives only in whispers between families who've lived here for generations. Whatever it is, it's been carefully preserved through silence. And silence can sometimes speak louder than words. The real question is this: are they protecting themselves from the world or protecting the world from what happened here? Until someone breaks that silence, the mystery will continue to cast its shadow. Because sometimes, the darkest secrets aren't forgotten. They're simply waiting for the right moment to be uncovered.